Hello and welcome to Starkey's monthly webinar held in our main offices in Baltimore, Maryland. Held the last Wednesday of every month at 12 noon Eastern. I'm your host, Rabbi Goldberg, and our guest today is Rabbi Kurcfeld. Thank you, Rabbi Kurcfeld, for coming on again. You can join us by phone just for the audio at 218-895-1203. Passcode 2020#. If you have any questions, concerns, shilas, you can email us at info@star-k.org or call us 410-484-4110. Our front desk staff is busy as usual every day answering questions from the kosher community. You can see on your left side of your screen right here, actually I'm going to change it to the bottom of your screen. You can see there's a chat button, and we'd like to hear from you. You can talk to us if you have any questions or concerns. Today, we're going to speak about kosher behind bars. Providing kosher food, Starkey's efforts to provide kosher food for prisoners, and some might say, I think Rabbi Kurcfeld, that people who are in prison, sometimes they are there for a reason, and why do we take the effort to provide kosher for them? But I just want to say at the outset, that's not our position. Our position is anyone who wants kosher, we're here to provide it for them. You know, other issues can be dealt with other rabbanim or different parts of society, but we are here, if someone requests kosher, we are here to do our best to provide it at the highest level that's possible. Right. You agree with that?
100%.
Okay, so we're certainly not advocating going to the prison to see what the kosher food is over there. It's not as even good as the airline food, I don't think. So it's nothing special.
No comment.
Okay. So let's start with how you got involved, Rabbi Kurcfeld, with this program, which evolved in a big way over the years.
Right.
So where did it all begin?
Okay, so just a real quick background to this whole story. Originally, I was the kosher food inspector for Baltimore City and Baltimore County, and that was before many of these laws were found unconstitutional by courts, both in New Jersey, here eventually Maryland.
Did you have a badge?
I had a badge, and I had an actual ID from the state, from the Jimmy.
When you come in, you say,
and people were shocked.
I'm Rabbi Kurcfeld.
When I used to come in and inspect it, and I do want to add something, just that people should know. I was always very fair because I was also involved in Starkey certification at that time. This goes in the 80s. This is in the mid 80s. That's when I started here as far as the early 80s, and I was the food inspector. So I always used to I had to get people to trust me.
Right.
And the way I got there were so many other people here under different hashgachas. And I used to come in and check. So to get people to trust you that you're not trying to, just, I'll use the word bashmutz them, I had one rule, and they knew I was always very fair and very honest. If it was a Starkey policy, you never got a violation. But if I found something that was a strict, definitive violation, regardless of whether you were a Starkey certified facility, or whether you were not a Starkey certified facility, I would write up the report and send it into the city or to the county. So for example, something as stark as milichik and fleshik, or something that would happen if I'd find something like that. Again, it wasn't common to find, but if that was what I wanted to show people. If it's clearly a kosher rule, that's clearly in Shulchan Aruch, and it got written up, it got rectified. The only time the city or the county ever went further, if it was a serious violation, not just a careless violation, and if you did not fix it. So if it was a serious violation, like when I found treif chicken in a place, they got taken to court. There's no answer to that. That's what the kosher laws were for. But if it's just a carelessness, you mixed by mistake something you didn't realize, like we do in our own homes, milk got mixed with fleshik, a pot with this. I'd write the report, immediately, it was removed. I would write what the action was.
That was the end of it.
That they wouldn't do, but I did it for everybody. Mm-hmm. And that's how I got the trust of the other vendors here.
In other words, you went into establishments that were certified by other agencies besides
Correct.
Starcade.
Correct.
And you were because you were working for the state.
City and county.
City and county.
Correct, not state.
Okay.
Okay, so once I had that,
Mm-hmm.
so now let me skip. So that was in the 80s. In 1991, there was a suit brought. I have a copy of it right here. His name was Cooper,
Mm-hmm.
and his name is Richard David Cooper. He was an inmate here in Maryland,
Mm-hmm.
and he brought a suit against Maryland, one of the original early suits, that to provide him with kosher food. The only kosher food he was able to eat was whatever's there, an apple, an orange, if there was Rice Krispies, milk. And he said, this is unfair, this is not whatever it was. So he brought a suit against Maryland, and that's when I got involved.
I put it up on the screen
Yes.
so they could see that. You're mentioning here, Rabbi Kurcfeld.
Yes, I am.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the reason why they came to me is because they knew me already as an inspector. I was still functioning as an inspector. We had not yet found the kosher laws as unconstitutional. Interestingly to note, they became unconstitutional by the time I gave a violation to a guy named Borgodi. He was a nephew of the famous Borgodi in Israel, who's now serving a life sentence for bombings in Eretz Yisrael.
Mm.
And I started up with, he had a violation in one of his stores, and he said, who are you, Rabbi, to tell me what to do, and the rest is history.
Wow.
But anyway, getting back to this
I mean,
story.
it's unconstitutional in Maryland.
It became all the places, one built on the next. First it was New Jersey became unconstitutional, then Maryland said it was unconstitutional. Getting back to the story here, in 1991 this suit was brought against the state, and I was they were trying to settle it. They didn't want to have to go to court, and they were trying to figure out a way to settle it. So I got contacted, being that I was the inspector of the city and county. Somebody mentioned my name. And I was brought into the jail, not as an inmate, but as a consultant, and to come in to review. And at that time, all I did, they asked me one thing. Could you identify everything that we already have that is kosher?
Mm-hmm.
What do we already have in-house? They didn't know. What if right now we wanted to serve what we already have? Whether it's bread, butter, cheese, yogurt. I'm not just talking about fruit. What is kosher? And that's what I did. I went through all their inventory that they had that was prepackaged or whatever it was, nothing to do with cooking,
Mm-hmm.
and made a list of what that
Because
was.
a lot of things are kosher.
Are kosher from the
anyway.
get-go.
Cheerios, whatever.
That's what I did.
Right.
And that was the request I was made, and that's all I did. I did explain to them what the issues were, because a lot of them were not knowledgeable what kosher was. And the end of the story was that, of course, they didn't understand how you could take kosher stuff and make it not kosher. I explained to them. So that was my first experience inside a correctional facility of what goes on there behind the scenes. So we went through all the things, but at the end, all I did for them at that time was identify what already in-house was 1,000% kosher, and what they could serve to this individual who was the first person who brought a suit.
And he lost, right?
And at the end,
he lost his case.
yes, and the end was that the Judge Motz, M-O-T-Z, Paskind, he decided that there, based on a Supreme Court ruling that there is a constitutional thing that people do have to have kosher, and you try your best, not kosher, religious needs, that correctional facilities across the United States must provide for the needs of religion in their correctional, as long as it does not conflict with some other need for example, security or something like that. And they have to balance between security needs and the religious needs. And at the end, the Judge Motz Paskind, his assessment was based on the amount of food that they could be given. It met the minimum nutritional values, and that there's no reason that they have to pay, because for them the state was
Right,
the
it
payment.
was a matter of cost. I put up on the screen.
Cost difference was?
He could get breakfast for 50 cents if you would eat what was already there.
Exactly.
If they had to provide it for him, it would be between $2.50 and
Yeah, but I do want to tell you one thing.
$5 a
I do want to
breakfast.
add just one thing that you don't see in that suit, and then we'll go weiter.
Yeah.
The state was ready and willing to give him the full kosher meals. One person, they said, you know what, it's not worth the amount of money of litigation. We will give you what you want. And give them, let's say, the meal mart meals.
Even though they lost. Even though he
No,
lost.
no, before they actually litigated it. They said, you know what, Meaning once I gave my presentation, they said, you know what, it's not worth the amount of money it would cost for litigation.
Okay.
Let's give Cooper or any Jews, a few Jews they had there, anybody who wants, we'll give them the airline meals, a little better stuff, and even though it cost much more money. But what happened was, and this is why they went to litigation, the Muslims found out about it, and that raised the amount of people from, let's say, 14 people, I'm making up a number, it wasn't that many in those days, but to 300. They said, you're giving to the Jews, then give us kosher halal. And then they said, well, it's that's a budget breaker. Then they went to court, and Cooper continued going to court, and they could not settle. And at the end, Judge Motz judged in favor of the state, that the food is nutritional enough, there's no need to go any further.
Right.
In light of the expense, he made the hashar of the balance between the two.
So where do they go from there?
Okay, from there, this is what occurs now years later. So until that time, there was no program here in Maryland whatsoever based on the judgment of Motz in favor of the state. Comes a candidate, O'Malley, who eventually did win as governor, and one of the Rabbonim...
This is not a political show, right?
No, that's a fact. He had promised, just like Trump promised and kept his word, as we know, to make Jerusalem to validate that Jerusalem is the capital of the thing and move the embassy. O'Malley had said that to the Jewish people, to those who were backing him, that if he comes in, one of the complaints that one of the rabbis complained was that there is no program. It's time already. It's very bad. They can't get any decent kosher food. 2009 already, so that's quite a few years, and he gave his word that if he becomes governor, he will. And kachoya, he became governor, and he sent out an edict, directive, I should say, to his people, that he wants by Pesach, I don't know when the governor gets sworn in, whenever it is, by Pesach, he wants a program in place. So they called me again. At this time, of course, different people. Mr. West, who was the head director of all food service for the whole state, a wonderful individual, he's now retired. Very, very, very cooperative in every situation and very serious-minded. And at that time, the head chaplain here in Baltimore City and involved in the kosher and the state was Rabbi Axelrod, Zazain Gesund, and he's right now also retired. And he gave us a directive, not to me, to them. He wants a kosher program in place.
O'Malley did.
O'Malley and Kachoy by Pesach. I get called, and we literally had to sit down. Again, he didn't say what it is. He just said that there's a budget issue, more than what they had, just whatever is certified. He wants a real program. At the same time, Mr. West, the director, had to deal with budget. He knew it was going to cost them more, but what can we do? So we sat down, the three of us, and literally from scratch, had to write regulation. I never did it in my life before. It didn't exist. Not one letter, not one word was written. We had to come up with regulations of this new program that doesn't exist. So of course, I had to make Mr. West understand what is the issues. So we came up with first goals of what we're going to try to achieve, based on how I explained to them what kosher was. So we spoke about bishul akum, that a Jew has to cook, has to be Jewish cooking. The issue of meat and chicken, if there's no Jew watching it, that's another issue of basar and ayin. There's whatever it is, Shabbos, Yom Tiv. Making a long story short, all that explanation to him, slowly, literally, it crystallized that we can't offer meat, because they can't have such a program with a mashgiach and everything. It doesn't work.
So there's no meat in the program?
There was no meat. One second, let me tell you what happened.
Maybe soy.
Exactly. So what happened was they realized that bishul is anything that's oila shulchan malachim, for those who are listening, anything that would be an issue of bishul akum, meaning the criteria that it's a problem of bishul, had to be eliminated. Anything that was even Shabbos and all that, and of course we had to segregate. Another thing, we couldn't have a mashgiach tamidi. And I do want to, one more time, before I forget, whoever's listening, this was only a consultation. This was not a star case certified
It doesn't
program.
meet, it doesn't meet the standards of
No, because there's no
Stark
mashgiach
Case.
tamidi. Rabbi Axelrod.
It's what we could do and what they were willing to pay for.
But it had to be halachically viable.
Okay.
So Rabbi Axelrod was in a sense the Rav HaMachshir. He's a frum Orthodox rabbi. He learned in the Alta Yeshivas. He's now retired. And we came up with a Yoitz Nichnas situation in a separate area, whatever that system was, and we made a lacto ovo diet, which was everything was only dairy. Anything that was prepared in that kitchen that was under his hashkucha was not an issue of bishul akum, because it was fake chicken, fake, the tofu stuff, fake meat. They had that flavor, but all that type of thing. Everything to do with bugs. They used either stuff that was pre-checked, but that's expensive, so instead they simply eliminated it. So you had other vegetables, cucumbers.
No romaine.
Exactly, so that cucumbers, tomatoes, everything else that's not a bug issue.
How did they make sure they used different knives?
No, so I'm saying everything was color-coded. I got it to say one thing, and this I want to tell you. So forgetting, I want to go waste the time in every detail.
Okay.
Here is the, matter of fact, I have the original one that was given to me right here to review. This was the actual final thing. I had to actually, you can see there's yellow markings on everything. I had to go through this is what we had originally wrote, and this was the final one here. Also, nothing to do with kosher, they had to deal with the fact of how do you control the people? One day yeah, one day not. Today you're Jewish, who's not Jewish? I got to tell you, Mr. West was an Eloi. Mr. West came up with such great ideas to avoid having just to make this whole program hefker. It should only direct it for those who wanted it. So therefore, you could only be on it. You could only change your religion every 2 months.
Why do they want to change your religion?
Because the food is better.
If the kosher food is better?
Well, it was. The food is better.
Wasn't there something...
Until Pesach came, and then they all became not Jewish.
So how many people were on this program in Maryland?
I don't remember. I can't tell you numbers.
Wasn't there
I can't tell you. Remember, it didn't go by real Jewish necessarily.
Right. There were more people on it than
yes, absolutely.
Or from Jews.
But let me tell you what West did. A couple of things like that. He made it like if you found in violation, if they see you eating a non-kosher meal, they warn you. After 3 warnings, you're thrown off the program. So it wasn't like a hefker. Even I don't know if you know in jails you don't get money, you get credits. So if you work in the kitchen, you get so many credits, and you can cash in those credits in the commissary to get snacks and things like that. If you were in the kosher program, they had in the computer that so-and-so is Jewish in the kosher program, and you couldn't get beef jerkies for your credits. And if they found you doing that, you get violation. If you go off the program on your own, you cannot re-apply on your own, not because of the warnings. On your own, you get off the program, you say, I'm not Jewish, I don't need it, and you start eating treif, you can't change your religion back for a year. So again, the point being, I'm just throwing out a couple of things in the thing. That had nothing to do with kosher, it had to do with how to control this program. Just keep controlling it. Everything was color-coded. And I want to end with one thing, and I think we should move on. The one thing I got to tell you, I used to go around with Rabbi Axelrod, and sometimes myself and Mr. West. I used to go into the penitentiaries, they have separate women, separate men's. Mr. West was literally, what was the difference? When I come into a facility, Star K gives a certification on something, right? We're the outsider, giving a certification on the inside.
Right.
Here, these laws, these regulations that were written is not a Star K regulation. It becomes state regulation. So when Mr. West came in, and if I found a mixed up fork or spoon, it's not like, okay, Rabbi, okay, we're going to take care of it. Don't go like that. The manager got written up. If she or he was not instituting this regulations that are on these papers to a T, you have violated like any other regulation that they have. And that made a major difference in their attitude toward the kosher program.
So it's a semi-kosher. It's not really.
Okay, but it's
al pi halacha. It's good, but it's not
that's exactly
standard.
We did al pi halacha, a yoitz v'nichnas, and Mr. West used to take Rabbi Axelrod unannounced.
That's what I was going to ask you.
They used to go around.
Doesn't he have to sign in? I mean,
it's unbelievable.
They know when he's coming.
Okay, yeah, but you can't change certain things. If you're doing something wrong, he would find it. And I got to tell you,
you're saying the kitchen staff didn't know when he was coming.
Exactly. Rabbi Axelrod would go around the whole state. They would actually drive him from what's it called? From facility to facility, all the way from the West Maryland to the East, to the North, to the South. And he used to call me if he had a shiloh, something came up, he would call me Rabbi Axelrod. We would discuss many times after the program. But I got to tell you, it definitely had a value.
So
Now,
where did it go from there? After that,
see, after that,
it became like sort of
right.
became more popular.
And after that, what occurred was that we started getting calls from other states who had also suits. Unfortunately, more Jews were coming into the correctional program facilities across the country, and they were suing for decent food. And states were having suits. I don't want to mention the states, and they all came to us, but across the country, from the West Coast to the East Coast. And they called us they wanted to get an idea of this because they heard about this. And of course, if the state is doing it, it must be something value and it's cost effective. They're worried about cost effective, and to meet the suit without having to overwhelm and litigate and all that. So they called us, and I clearly told every state that called me, I am not allowed to. This was paid for and produced by the state of Maryland. It does not belong to the Star K. And if you're interested in getting a copy of this and what it's all about, I'd be glad to talk to you. But I never spoke to any state until I got permission, in this case was Mr. West, to give permission that I'm allowed to. And he always allowed. I said, you call West, they should call West, and if West tells me, yes, I have permission, I'll be glad to share it.
Did other states do this?
So what happened was they went into it, and I don't know of any state that did the full thing. Either they did much less, and they weren't willing to do this degree, so they did even less than this.
Or they did more.
Or the rabbis of that state who had a, what's the word,
interest?
No, had some sort of interaction with the correctional facilities of that state, said they want more.
More means,
and they put pressure on their
like
politicians.
A real
meaning like sealed meals you get in a, because our situation was all fake meat. So you weren't getting real chicken or real beef. You were getting the vegan, the fake.
Do you know about the situation?
Morning Star stuff.
Do you know about situations in the New York jails? Like, did they get? Did they get real kosher?
There's one that is specifically in upstate New York that, and I think it's a smart thing they do. That they realize it is much easier to bring, if there's any people who are particular about kosher, it doesn't have to be just Orthodox. It could be anyone who really wants a kosher meal. There's one in New York, upstate, that they have most of the people there, and this way, if we're doing it anyway, let's get everybody in one.
They have a real.
They have a real, yes, to some degree. Remember, there's not hefkers. It's not like you're allowed to do anything. But there is more allowing of the frum inmates to be involved more in the kitchen, because mostly inmates work the kitchen. So in this facility, they have the frum people working in the kitchen, so they can turn on the fires. So they're getting real chicken, real beef. They have minyonim, they have shiurim, they have daf yomi. One place I know they even have a Sephardi and a separate Sephardi minyan versus a Ashkenazi minyan.
Can I ask you a question? You don't have to answer this. We've been talking here for 20 minutes about kosher behind bars. You don't mention the word prison. You say correctional facility.
I want to call by what everybody else was.
They
formally called.
Right. So is there something? Is that not a nice way of putting it?
I don't know. I just want to call by what the professional.
Correctional facility.
That's what it says. Okay.
I see. Okay.
It is whatever it is.
Okay. Fine.
Yeah.
So okay. Is there any? So that's our involvement.
No, but there's more.
Oh, there's more.
There's more. So now the other involvement has become
on
the. So besides we actually were involved in the program and involved in helping other states have approached us and things like that. Now on a regular basis, I'm in contact with inmates either by mail or by reaching out. Can you help us? They are not getting in their state, or in their, remember, we're not talking about these states have something. New York State has something, but don't think across the whole country every penitentiary in Nebraska, has a kosher program.
So they contact.
So for example, let me just read you one.
Okay, fine.
So this is a person reaching out. Now you should know that they're not allowed to. All letters are read, going in and going back.
Read by the
by whoever it is. You have to understand that. And now they have email. So I am never allowed to directly respond. It goes through a program called corelinks.com. You have to make an email address. It goes to them, and then the inmate can access it there. And again, now they're reading electronic mail. So
I asked you before if you could print out some of those emails, and you explained to me that
after,
that-
I think 2 weeks,
it's not an email like a regular email you have on
No,
your desktop. You have
no.
to go into the system.
either I copy and paste and save it,
All right, okay.
which I have on, I haven't saved
Otherwise,
Devar.
emails they delete them.
Some of the inmates send me Devar Tires. Believe it or not, I'm not joking. Before Yom Tovim, so we correspond Devar Tires, and I put that. And some of them are good. I said one person he should write. He's a real yeshiva guy, and he really has good Devar Tires of his own because he's like the Rav. Meaning because means a lot of Jews there who are not they're Jewish but they're not they went to yeshiva,
Right.
and he goes ahead and he sends me some of the Devar Tires and I told him I have a name for your sefer. You should call it Sefer Mate Asurim. Why? Why Mate Asurim? Because he writes that. He goes, when he sits and he learns, it takes him away. He feels like he's not there. When he's sitting and I learned, he did whatever he did. At Katin was at Katin, so that's what the paskin he has to be in the thing. But the Torah for him takes him away. So I said, so that you should call it Sefer Mate Asurim. It's the one thing that is Mate you from the Asurim, and unfortunately, he's, it's a long. Anyway, let me just read you. This is a Yid that sent me. Just an example, right? Okay, he writes, Shalom. I'm writing to you today because here at this correctional facility, I need some assistance. I really need, he writes, help really. We are having a major issue with what and how they are serving us our kosher meals. Not to mention where they prepare them as well. For breakfast, we get, listen to what they get, if they don't have any decent program. We get dry cereal, 2 teaspoons of peanut butter, 2 packets of jelly, 1 packet of graham crackers. The cereal and peanut butter are not in separate sealed containers. All the items I mentioned above are put into a clamshell style styrofoam tray and served to us within the general population with the not kosher. Lunch is hardly any different, with the exception that instead of dry cereal, we get some sort of vegetable, either a tomato, a cucumber, radish, or something like that, a few of them.
So what is his complaint about the breakfast? It's not kosher. It sounds as if peanut
No,
butter.
he says other things.
Peanut butter could be kosher.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
true.
Jelly, probably
He's asking to help us to give a program. So I'll just keep reading a little over. So dinner and supper is even worse. For this meal we get a vegetable, same as lunch, 3 slices of bread, 4 packets of jelly, packets of graham crackers, and 2 scoops of cottage cheese.
So, in other words, this is what everybody gets, or just the kosher?
The koshers.
Oh, the kosher.
The kosher.
I see.
That's because he can't eat the rest.
I see. The regular people get
Are getting beef and chicken and all
I see,
that. This is what he's getting because he needs
So
kosher.
he's
So this program here, I don't want to say which correctional facility this is he had nothing. So he asked me if we can get involved and help him. I'm not finishing the whole thing. Get involved. Others write. I'll just read one more.
Did that go anywhere?
Yeah, I'll just tell you in a minute.
Okay.
I'll just read one more and that'll be it. Just a sample.
We have a question here.
Yeah, what is it?
Josh is asking, do the inmates ever feel hypocritical being convicted criminals for requesting high standards of kashrus? That's what we mentioned at the beginning,
Yes.
I think, that that's not our, whether they do or they don't, is not our position to give them, to criticize them. We feel that our job is to provide kosher if they ask.
But it's also, I think, a little bit more than that, if I may say. Ultimately, people do make mistakes, and people have to face the consequence of their mistakes. I don't think because a person, the Yetzer Hara-wise, somehow falters and fails, let's say, in monetary issues, and that's why you're in jail, because whatever that may be, and suddenly to say that just because you fault in one area doesn't mean you suddenly every rights of you, and the Supreme Court has validated that you have, just because you go to jail doesn't mean you have, it's Batal Mavutal, everything else, you can't be religious anymore, you have no rights to pray. So kosher for us is religion, and therefore, and everyone has understood that. It's not a diet fad, it's not part of, I want to lose weight or whatever it is, and therefore it takes on a religious, and therefore I have a right to, but you're right, it's not so simple. I mean, I've heard others in the correctional facilities, as I mentioned to you once, who did comment on that they find it hypocritical, but that's how I answer them, and they understand. I'm sure the people that mentioned that are not perfect either. Anyway, this person wrote to me, my name is so-and-so, I'm 73-year-old Orthodox Jew.
This one is typed.
Yes. I'm incarcerated within the correctional facility of a certain state, and I've been fighting for years to receive kosher meals. This person is 73 years old. Finally, I found a truly outstanding, compassionate attorney who's willing to file a federal litigation on my behalf. And he goes on and on and on. I don't want to read the whole thing. He's asking me, could us be able to be expert, could his attorney call us and so on and so forth, and could he help to us to get that done, to help out. I answered to one of them, this is the same idea. And this is what I wrote, this is a sample of what I write back. I write that I am in receipt of your letter dated so-and-so. In it you express a great concern of whether your meals are kosher and so on and so forth. But I say at the end, in your letter you request that I assist you in the endeavor of correcting this problem by making an unannounced inspection. This one was asking me to make an inspection. This one will ask me, can we get involved? It's the same idea. Regrettably, I cannot, being that the Star K, I cannot, being that the Star K does not have an authority in your state, and this is what I write back. I would be glad to help you to come in, but I have no authority in your place. If somehow you can convince the authorities to allow me to come in, I'd be glad to respond.
You need someone to advocate.
So someone has to advocate and ask me. I will not go to the state and some of that. You have to go through the channels. If they call me, I'll be glad. And it has happened where post I have been asked to come in and to be at meetings. I've had many times of how we could be, because there have been some issues and some corrections to the program, even in Maryland. And I've been at a round table as big as this, full of people. And I've given even 2-hour orientations and to staff of how to do the program. So I cannot go in without getting to do. If somebody calls us and we will help, we could do it. And it's always as a consultation, not as of course, a Star K per se.
Josh wants to ask, are there non-Jews that request kosher because they think it's better food? I think we said that before.
Yes.
There are. That's what
right.
You mentioned Mr. West was trying
and that's what Mr. West was to weed out, right.
Weed out. You can't change your religion every
and he
Monday,
wanted
Thursday.
to make sure, since it cost more, that it's only being directed to those who are truly Jewish. Now, he did not, if you say you're Jewish, that's all you have to sign a paper. There's a form. They're not going to go ahead and check your heredity. It's nothing like that. But if you say you're Jewish, you will be getting this food for 2 months. So just be aware, and you sign your name on that. So I told you, all those people the first year who got better food, Pesach, they all dropped out when they saw a Pesach meal. And once you drop out, you weren't allowed to become Jewish again for a year.
Yehuda wants us to mention that there's an organization that has a pen pal program for Jewish inmates, and he puts up the website there. Moshe asks, is there a federal law mandating to give kosher food for religious reasons? That's what we're talking about.
So we've said that. So the Supreme Court has had cases of religious needs, and that is what all the other courts have been basing the kosher part on.
It's sort of like a balance you're explaining, right?
Once the Supreme Court poskined, I don't remember the name of it, but they all quote this one case.
Turner? Is that Turner?
Turner, right, the Turner case.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court clearly said, in general, that inmates have a right that their religious needs to be properly addressed, as long as they're balanced with the needs of security
and cost
and whatever. They just said that concept. So once that Supreme Court said that, all the other courts have said they understood that kosher food falls under that because it is a religious need. And now they
have to work out the practical.
But I got to tell you that most courts so far, I looked at all the different states that I dealt with. In the end, most courts, 99% felt that the amount of food that was available already as kosher in the program, because as you know and I know from our experience at the Star K, in our day and age, when I first started the Star K in 33 years ago, I had to schlep food with me. There is not a place in the United States.
When you went to prison, you had to schlep food?
No, not this prison. But when I used to go around the country, to go to places.
Flying, when you're flying.
So when I went to Alamosa, Colorado for Shechita or something, what'd you have in Alamosa, Colorado? There's nothing.
Right.
But today,
And now it's all available, right?
you can't starve. You go into any supermarket anywhere in the world,
bread,
everything
the
has a
crackers,
hechsher.
The jelly, the peanut
Correct.
butter.
Maybe not chol Yisrael, that type of thing, but pas Yisrael, but kosher you're not.
So let me ask you, some of these inmates also consult you on halachic shilas
Correct.
also, right? Like what kind of...
So the shilas, the problem is this is the problem, is that inmates, even though they have access to email, and they have access to books, like those who are litigating for whatever reason, appeals and things like that, they have access, and they have books for general entertainment reading purposes, but they do not have access to the internet. You're not giving internet access. So any shilas that they come up, so the most common question I get from inmates are kosher. Is this kosher or not? We see the product in the kitchen. Actually,
It may not have a symbol.
and no symbol.
Or
It
a symbol
doesn't.
they don't recognize, right?
Mostly
No?
they don't have a symbol.
Uh-huh.
Is this something that needs a symbol? Is this cereal kosher? Is that cereal something new that comes up? Because they want to expand what they can eat. So that's the most common question I get. Other question I get is more of other things that they don't know what to do, halachic things. So it would be, for example, one person sent me recently. He had moved to a new correctional facility, and he went from one correctional facility to another, not from the outside in, from inside to another place. He didn't know what the Zmanei Tefillah were.
Mm-hmm.
So he needed Zmanim Tefillah to know what's the earliest, because especially before Yom Tov, they wanted to daven early, whatever it was, that they had a group of Yidden there. And I sent them a whole thing. I actually had to write it because I can't write graph. It's not like a regular email. I had to physically write a whole thing of Zmanim for him on things like that. The other ones that could be shilas on. They had shilas on Shabbos, Hilchos Shabbos, what the goy can do for them, to reheat food, how they should leave it.
Do they have Sfarm?
Sure, they have Sfarm.
Yes, Sfarm.
There's Sfarm, they're allowed.
Mm-hmm.
There's a that was the Aleph Institute does a great work. The Aleph Institute does a great work for all the Yiddish neshamas that are in the prison system, of providing with them. I know recently in one place I get an email from a prisoner, from an inmate, that they got him a Sefer Torah to be able to lane. That's an unusual thing to get a Sefer Torah.
I thought you said in one of them they have 2 minyanim. Even they
No, but this is a different place.
It's a different place.
Remember, New York is very sensitive because there's so many Yidden there. I told you, if you can have 2 minyanim of Sephardi, and okay, so you get already what you're talking about. I mean, they understand.
So you're talking about outside New York.
Exactly.
Imagine
Imagine they get a Sefer Torah. I'm making up a place, Nebraska. I mean, to get into, they're not familiar with this. I meant the idea. So the fact that they had things like that. I remember one thing that he didn't have a real minyan. See, but he wanted to keep that he asked me a shaila. He wanted to keep that feeling, to keep the people, the bren, and some people were not from it. And a year later, he sends me an email that he got them all from, meaning Elisha Shabbos, putting on tefillin. And I said to him, there is no restriction to lane from the Torah. If you don't have a minyan, just take out the Torah and lane the parsha for them. He knew how to lane. Just read the parsha. Just don't make brachas. Don't bring up aliyahs. There's no isser. So things like that. They don't know. I can't remember every shilah that was asked. But it's not just food shilas. It's halachic shilas.
The Chafetz Chaim has a little sefer called Nidchei Yisrael for soldiers who were in the army in Europe.
Right.
A lot of those shilas, a lot of shas chak things that are difficult under difficult circumstances.
Correct.
Would be applicable to the situation.
That's
probably
100%.
would be a good place for them to look. Moshe wants to know why there's still cases about receiving kosher food if the Supreme Court or the courts have ruled that they are allowed to. And the answer is that, like you said, it has to be balanced. So it's not.
The problem
100%.
is that any case where there's an issue going on that Moshe is asking about, it's because they don't want to keep eating cottage cheese. I don't want just having just bread. I want chicken. I want beef. Wiffle, how much can you eat this? Yes, maybe.
How much peanut butter?
I told you,
have?
the state, when I was dealing with Mr. West on this thing, there was a nutritionist as part of the thing. It has to meet nutritional value. But, a person who's a vegan is not eating meat. You can't say that they are unhealthy. And that's their attitude. Vegans are not, you can't say that. But some people, and they bedavka want no meat, no chicken. So therefore, in the state's mind is, why should we have to pay for chicken and meat? As long as it's nutritionally wholesome and healthy, why do I have to give you chicken and meat?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why usually that's where the fights are.
Mm-hmm. Josh wants to know, could they be discriminated against if they openly act Jewish, the prisoners? I mean,
I have from all my experiences of years, going back years now, I'm not telling you that there has not been discrimination. There has been severe discrimination. More covertly than overtly. They just make it difficult. I'll give you an example. I know one inmate was complaining severely. Vus, he's a frum guy. What does he do all day? And he wrote in his email to me, everyone else is watching TV. I'm not interested in watching TV. Everyone's playing cards. I don't want to play cards. I want to learn. I want to daven, whatever he felt was his in the Shema thing. Okay, so what do you care if I go into the all-purpose room, quiet, where they have their minyanim, if we want to spend an extra hour there? Why? And so when I know for a fact when he got moved to a different facility, this gets controlled by the head chaplaincy. So the first place where he was, there's no, I don't know how they choose who's the head chaplain. Head chaplain is the head chaplain over all the chaplains. But that person is obviously some denomination. This particular head chaplain of this particular correctional facility was someone who wasn't Jewish. I don't want to say necessarily who it was, what religion he was, but one that is not very friendly to Judaism. And he felt that he purposely made everything difficult. No accommodation. If, for example,
the inmate felt that
constant, nothing was accessible, nothing available. If you're given 25 minutes to daven, let's just say that's the schedule on the clock. 26 minutes, he would come and get you out. There's another facility where he lived, where he was for a while. The head chaplain, who was a friendly person toward Judaism, he himself was not Jewish, but he was friendly and open and more of a fundamentalist Christian. He was very, what can I do for you? Noch an hour, stay noch an hour. One other example, I'll give you one other example. Pesach. You know, and I know everybody knows, that Pesach you cannot start a real Seder until it's mamish, dark, tzeis. Now, normally 8:30, let's say it's 8:30 approximately. Even if you go with 42 minutes, whatever it is after Shkia. 8:30, supper's been over already, who knows how long ago. Everyone's already in their cell. Go to sleep, it's over, the day's over.
So he needs an accommodation to
But not just that, accommodation to go past almost midnight. So this guy wouldn't do anything.
Wow.
So he refused. He would take his food back and make a Seder in his cell. He can't eat now. He would take his matzah they provided. He'd take his matzah, take his food, and take it back to the cell. And when it was time to eat, he'd eat. He had no choice.
Did he get shmur matzah or regular?
No, whatever they like. I don't know how that works. But again, the Aleph Institute helps a lot in this area. But the other place, they made accommodations for all the Eden. It was they accommodated them. They even let them do in this other place bir chametz. Just to do the bir chametz with control. They outside in the field. They let all the Eden go out there and do bir chametz.
So you're saying a lot depends on who's
in charge. Right. So just to answer his question. What's the next one?
There is a question about hypocrisy, which we discussed.
Yeah, I know.
We discussed that before. Yeah, that seems to be an important, interesting question. I do want to mention just a couple of halachic points, Rabbi Kurcfeld.
Sure.
If I could. People ask, what bracha do you make if you see someone who came out of prison? You make a bracha on him. There are two possibilities. One would be shechionu, because you're happy to see him. You haven't seen him in 30 days. The other would be a Machai Mason.
Right.
You haven't seen him in a year.
Right.
So the idea of Machai Mason is because if you haven't seen someone in a year, you've passed by Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and now you saw them and they're still alive. Right? They're still alive. So there is brought down in halacha that there's a bracha of Machai Mason. However, the poskim say, for instance, the Ben Ish Chai says he never heard of anyone making this bracha even without Shem Malchus at all, and he's wondering why is it. He says because he thinks people, when you make a Machai Mason, they feel sort of Uncomfortable, right?
Right,
Where was I? Where was I?
Right,
I was dead.
difficult.
So that bracha is not, we don't make, especially since you know that the person is alive. Even if you haven't talked to him, had there been a problem, something would have happened, you would have heard with the communications today. So there's not, that bracha is not made. But Shechianu, you could ask, do you make a bracha Shechianu? You haven't seen someone in 30 days. So the poskim discuss a couple of reasons why in general, you see your friend after 30 days, why don't you make that bracha? Why don't we do it? It's brought down in halacha. And the reason that they say is because people will feel sort of pushed to say it. Let's say I'm not really that friendly with you and I haven't seen you in 30 days.
Correct.
And now I oh, Rabbi Kurcfeld, wow, so that you won't feel insulted. So that's why we don't generally make the bracha. But in a case, the poskim do say, Yeshiva Levi and other poskim say that if it's a really unusual case, the person has been really out of touch and it's really unusual, you can make a shechianu. So if you really, person has been away in prison, there could be a strong halachic basis to make a shechianu when you see him. Rosh Shlomo Zalman, his children lived in, I think, Belgium, and he hardly ever saw them. When he would see them, he wanted to make a bracha, but you don't really make this bracha, so he would take a fruit. He would take a...
make a shechianu on
a fruit. And then he them. Right, so... I see that we're discussing again, the question of
I do want to make, again, I want to repeat this concept. I just want to add one point. Yeah. Again, I have read so many emails from so many inmates and letters that I've received. You know, a person, as we all know, there's a thing called a wake-up call. I don't think, again, that it is our place to judge at least this one nakuda. What drove a person to do whatever they did, whether it was the Yetzirah of money or any other Yetzirah that it might have been? Ultimately, now they have to face the thing, and there's consequences to it. But I got to tell you, from the letters that I've read, if anyone thinks here they're having a wonderful time, and even the kosher food that's given to them is something of, they're in Club Med, or anything like that, and trust me, their lives are right now ruined. They have not happy in that sense. They're trying to do the best of what they can, and I think that we have to realize that even getting any decent type of kosher food for them is some at least for them. It gives them some level of ruach and some level of humanity, at least humanity, to feel something. It's bad enough that they're there, trust me, they're not feeling, they're not on seventh heaven. So this is an important thing. It's bad enough that they're punished for what they're punished for. Kosher is a very vital part of our whole, besides our religion, daily existence, and I think it's an important thing to try to provide them to the best of our ability. I can't override the system. Ultimately they're in control, the Department of Corrections, but at the same time to try to work with them and try to convince them to give them as best kosher as possible.
Okay, Rabbi Kurcfeld, that's very well said. On that point, we will end the webinar. I want to thank everyone for joining with us, and thank you, Rabbi Kurcfeld, for that.
Sure, for having me.
It's very interesting to hear about all the the details of it. And if you want to see the replay, the archives are available at our website, star-k.org, or on Vimeo. Search for Star K Kosher. We just give us some time to put this webinar up there, but you can see the previous ones. Last month, we talked about all the Shabbos lights that are out there,
right?
And the new Shabbos lights and such gadgets, and we hope that you find those interesting. If you have any questions or concerns, you can email us at info@star-k.org or call us 410-484-4110. Thank you very much, Rabbi Chapman and Ms. Rosenstein, for your technical assistance, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks again, Rabbi Kurcfeld.
Good.